You're listening to Northwoods Church Matters, a podcast of Northwoods Church in Evansville, Indiana, where we discuss why the local church matters and things that matter to the local church. I'm your host, Matt Higgins. Welcome back to the Northwoods Church Matters podcast. I am here with our usual crew. I've got Ivan McDonald with me.
Hey, guys.
And I've got Carrie Bachning.
Hey, everyone.
Carrie has already announced that we're in full dad mode tonight, so we're looking forward to some dad jokes and some dad rock, and maybe we'll play some Creed or something like that. But we're going to start a new series tonight. We're going to talk about technology and how it affects the Christian, and we're going to talk about different sort of topics, starting off with smartphones, but we'll talk about social media, we'll talk about pornography, we'll talk about all the ways that technology is impacting the Christian life. And so I'm excited about it because I think this is a very important topic going on right now. So why don't we start and talk some questions about smartphones and dig into it tonight?
All right. I feel the need to state that I'm looking at my notes on my smartphone.
It's okay.
Why do we need to talk about smartphones? It's an everyday part of our life now.
Well, I think that's kind of why is like,
yeah.
Pew Research says 91% of Americans now own a smartphone, which is...
That seems low.
Did you say 91%?
91%.
Wow.
And I think that some of that has to do with our 65 plus population.
Yeah.
They're the lagging people behind, but everybody in every generation has a smartphone now, it seems. So there's not much of a generational divide. It's those 65 plus people that own fewer smartphones. But you see it like out in the mall. Granny, who's 80 years old and has a smartphone. Maybe your grandparents, you have to teach them how to use a smartphone. My dad has an Apple Watch now. I have to teach him how to use the Apple Watch. He returns calls on his Apple Watch and thinks that's cool. But there's also not like
James Bond talking to his wrist. Right?
Matthew, can you hear me?
Okay. Come in, Matthew. I keep having to tell him that nobody talks on their watch. Like, people have Apple Watches.
Actually, we do. If I'm on a ladder or in a crawl space, or it is
I
quite
guess I
handy
could see that.
when your hands are tied up, and of course someone calls at just the worst absolute possible time. So it's like, all right, just swipe yes, hello. Yeah.
Do you feel like a secret agent when you're doing that?
Sometimes.
I feel like a goober when I'm doing it. I'll just be honest. Yeah.
I don't have any problem doing it. I mean,
I don't know why.
Walk around with my arm. I get that.
Special Agent Ivan McDonald talking. But I think that it's just because it's so normal is the reason that we have to talk about it, that attitudes and behaviors have generationally changed, and it's just become this ordinary cultural part of life. And we often don't realize that this has changed us. Like, it's changed our behaviors. It's changed the way we interact with people. And it's good to just step back every once in a while and just say, yeah, we probably should evaluate this and see whether it's good for us or not good for us in a lot of different ways.
Leaving the home, right? You always check your pockets. Keys, wallet, phone.
Cell phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's always in my left pocket. That's where.
Same.
Yeah.
Pants forever now start getting that fade, right?
Yes, you got the fade on where the phone is.
So, is having a smartphone sinful?
Well, it's not inherently sinful. So let's start with the good stuff. Anything that God has created can be corrupted by the fall. And so that includes anything, including devices that God has inspired mankind to make. And if you think about it, smartphones are essentially just communication in a way. And so it's not wrong to communicate with each other and communicate with other human beings. But unfortunately, just like anything else, like sex or money or anything else, it's been corrupted by the fall. And so when we talk about the topic, we're talking about how smartphones do a couple different things. They can tempt us into sin. They're a source of temptation. They can ensnare us in sin, that it becomes somewhat of an addictive type of property, that we're constantly touching our phones or constantly checking our phones, and it becomes habitual in our life. But then it also can become a tool for the sins of the heart. Like, it's the thing that people use, for example, in order to ingratiate lust. Like, it's the methodology for that. With every preaching story, there's some truth and some legend to it. But there's the preaching story about G.K. Chesterton, when somebody asked him, what's wrong with the world today? And his answer was, dear sirs, I am. And so that's really the issue with smartphones, is what's wrong with smartphones? We are. The human being aspect of it, that we use it for all manner of wild stuff, for every good thing that happens with smartphones and the connection that it creates, there's also lots of ills that it creates. And the hands of the person that uses it is the real big problem because we're sinful people.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a bus, right? The phone is not necessarily good or bad. It's what's on that bus coming to us that determines if it's sinful.
Yeah. And sometimes you get a great bus driver, and sometimes you're on the movie Speed and you're going in a circle for hours trying not to blow up.
Yeah. Paul says to the Corinthians, whether I drink, whether I eat, whatever I do, let it all be for the glory of the Lord.
Yeah.
And so it's how we use it, is how I'm using this for the glory of the Lord. Now, obviously, the Lord does want us to enjoy things, but if it goes too far, problem.
Yeah. And just like anything else, we just got to analyze, okay, so is this for the glory of God? Because we fall into certain patterns and habits and we stop analyzing, okay, is this good? And we need to step back every once in a while and analyze, okay, is this good for me? So I think it's good to step back from that.
How does smartphone affect our time?
Hugely. I wanted to, before this, check my smartphone usage in terms of how much I use it per day. I forgot to do that. I'm a little scared of that. I think last time I checked, it was much less than the national average. Americans spend 4 hours and 30 minutes per day on their smartphones. That may be because I'm a Gen Xer. It may be because I try to enforce some good habits on my phone. But also some other statistics. Americans check their phones 144 times per day. I think that's kind of low. That sounds pretty low.
Sounds low.
57% of Americans openly state they feel like they are smartphone addicts. So on self-evaluation, 57% of people feel like they're addicted to their phone. And let's go down this rabbit hole here. The thing that social media companies want you to do is to increase time and engagement. There's always seeking to say, okay, so how can I increase this person's use of this? We want them doom scrolling. We want them on there for hours and hours. And they're constantly coming up with different ways to entrap people to do that. The whole Facebook like button was a methodology in order to do that. Photo tagging was another way to keep people engaged.
Well, now the next level of that, each platform has their own version of Reels or Shorts or whatever. And you can literally just, I'm watching one video, on to the next, swipe, on to the next, swipe, on to the next swipe for eternity.
Yeah.
It never ends.
Or hours. And
yeah.
Like features like on YouTube, like it automatically rolls over to the next video.
Autoplay, yeah.
Autoplay type stuff. Like you have to set it to not do that, to autoplay. But they want to keep you on there with certain particular content. There's something I've learned called growth hacking. That most social media companies, like their whole big thing is getting people to grow in engagement through psychology. So they're constantly doing tiny experiments on their users in order to figure out, okay, how can I get growth in the amount of engagement that people have on this platform? And so you'll notice constant changes in social media. And the reason is they're constantly tinkering with, how do I get this person to change their behavior? And a lot of time, it's just to increase your overall time so that you're consuming more of that product over and over again. I think that the thing to consider is Ephesians 5:15-17. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. I think that's a quality set of verses for social media. It's like, the time is evil and it's growing worse and worse and worse. And so we have to be, as Christians, people that evaluate, is this a great use of my time to be doom scrolling through TikTok for 4 hours? Probably not. And what we're watching probably isn't the greatest stuff either.
No, I've heard that people today consume more information the first 15 minutes when they wake up and right before bed than their grandparents did in a month's time.
Wow.
Like just the amount of data that our minds are taking in and having to process. And I don't think that our bodies were necessarily made to handle that amount of data and then know what to do with it, categorize it, and all of the stuff that sleep does, and move on from that.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I have one of the local news apps, and it by default will blast anytime there is a local breaking news. And any given morning, I'll wake up and there'll be 3 or 4 from overnight shooting, pedestrian hit by whatever this, and they're never good. They're all bad things. And then even more so, for me to process that at 6:30 in the morning probably is tenfold worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I went through as an exercise before we did this to figure out like what notifications do I have on? Because I didn't even think about like how many apps when they install, like they automatically have the notifications turned on, and you physically have to go into the settings and turn those things off if you don't want them on. And I had a lot of things that were on that I had no idea were on, and they went off today. But just, it's amazing how insidious it is that they're constantly trying to steal time.
Of things all day long wanting attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Check me, look at me, see what's new, what deals are coming. And at the time, it always sounds like, you know what, I do want these deals from Arby's and I want to know when I get them, right? And then 3 months later, you're like, I'm so tired of all of these emails and never getting ahead of my inbox. And it's like, if I want the deals from Arby's, I'll just go look at them at the time. I don't need them sitting to me every single month.
Or worse, 3 times a day. Most of those are.
Yes. It's the social media companies and Google and everything else. Like, they're actively fighting for your time. Or you go to a website and it turns on that message. Do you want to turn on notifications for this website? Well, of course not. But everything, they're actively trying to get a piece of your attention for advertising purposes to sell you a product.
Probably 2 months ago, and Matt, we've talked about this. 2 months ago, I went to a conference and one of the talks was time on the phone. And one of the points that the gentleman made was that we don't know how to be still. And there was a lot of points on that. But one of the cool things he did was he just stopped mid-sentence on stage. And he just stood there and looked at us.
Oh, I can feel the anxiety building.
And then he'd raise the microphone closer and he wouldn't say anything. And you could just feel the entire room, like we're all sitting on the edge of seats. And he did probably 30, 45 seconds of just total silence. And it was the most uncomfortable I've ever been in probably my entire life, because you just don't know how to not do something. And he gets done and he's like, guys, that was 45 seconds and half of the room lost it and didn't know what to do with ourselves. We're so used to having so much media, and the minute you have a free second, where's your hand go? Right to the pocket to get the phone out, because I'm not going to stand here and wait for my food in line and not look at my phone.
Yeah.
Unreal at how that was such a eye-opening experience. Because, you'd ask me, I'm like, I can go without my phone or go without input or media. Not even close.
Yeah. I did an illustration with my last church while I was preaching one time that we were covering Psalm 46 and be still and know that I am God. And I said, let's just be still for a moment and let's pray. And we're not going to have any background music. We're not going to have any distractions. Let's just focus on the Lord in prayer. And then I only planned to do it for a minute. And so a full minute was up and I said, that was a minute, and just said the amount of time that had elapsed. And there was like audible gasps from the audience. It felt like much, much, much longer. And it was so uncomfortable. But you're right. It's like I'm constantly trying to fill the time and fill my space with things that are just inane. Like, why am I constantly checking Facebook or Instagram or things like that?
Even if it's good stuff. I mean, Rebecca and I have had the talk before that. So I'm a big podcast listener, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are too.
Same.
And all of our 3 wonderful listeners. Thank you. But even constantly listening to Christian podcasts is still an intake of media. And there's a difference between intaking media and adding what I'll put air quotes around knowledge to actually spending time with God in my heart and actually dwelling on Him. That's not the same thing, right? Having constant podcasts and constant music doesn't necessarily mean that I'm developing a relationship with God. It just means I'm intaking more media and I've still got to process and do something with it.
Yeah. One thing we talk about in church a lot is the worship aspect of our time, that what we spend our money on is what we worship, but also what we spend our time on is what we worship. And what is it saying if I'm spending 4 hours a day on TikTok scrolling through videos and I only spend barely 5 minutes in reading my Bible devotionally? we've got it way out of kilter. And I have a lot more time to read the Bible or to pray or to do any sort of spiritual discipline than I really give myself credit for. I just need to eliminate some bad time waste in my life.
How does smartphone use affect our desires?
Well, again, what we spend our time on shows what we worship. And a lot of times what we're worshiping in cell phone use or smartphone use is me. It's pride. It's self-centeredness. It's saying, I need to entertain myself. I can't be bored. I have to do something to feed. I can't stand in line for 5 minutes at this fast food restaurant. I just need to be entertained. Or I want to escape my horrible life. Like, things around me are bad, and I'm just going to doom scroll through TikTok just because I'm just trying to escape from things that are bad. Or I want to promote myself. Like, I'm on social media because I really want people to notice me or be aware of me or promote my company or whatever else. Or I want people to make me feel good. Like, I'm looking for likes. I'm looking for affirmation. I want people to notice me. Those are all different things, it seems, but at the center of all those things is self. Mm-hmm. That it's a sense of pride that I want people to worship me, to notice me, and even me, I worship me. It's all about my needs, my wants, my desires. So there's that aspect of it. But have y'all seen the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma?
It sounds very familiar.
It came out like 4 years ago, but it's interviewing a bunch of folks that used to work at social media companies just to kind of get the behind the scenes aspect of social media. And one of the things that was said in the documentary was, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product.
Oh, yeah.
And that is so true. Like, you aren't paying for TikTok. You aren't paying for Facebook. You aren't paying for Instagram because advertisers are doing that. And so they're trying to get access to you. They want you to change behavior and attitudes, which it's affecting our desires. It affects what we want. And the more that we are on social media, the more that they can predict like what we want and what we desire. And they have an algorithm for that. And they're going to try to affect us and change all of our desires. And so they've got systems to analyze, to model, and predict all our behaviors and attitudes. And they're trying to change that. Smartphones are in the business of creating unconscious habits. It's changing our desires. And that, I think, for a Christian is a very dangerous thing, to engage in something that we know is knowledgeably trying to change our heart and change our attitudes and behaviors. It makes me think about Proverbs 5:23, that we need to guard our heart above all things, for out of it flow the well springs of life. Mm-hmm. That if we're not guarding our heart and our affections, then we're going to get sucked into the wrong thing, and it changes the entire course of our life. We got to guard our heart using our smartphone.
Yeah. So between Google and Facebook, the ads that are displayed there and the way that they use your browsing history to target that next ad. I mean, sure, you can say, like, in the commercial world, it was just as bad. Like, I'm watching a NASCAR race and it's never going to fail. There's a tobacco product, there's an alcohol product, and there's a Gillette razor, right? Because they're hitting that demographic. But with the smartphone, I mean, it's amped to the next level. Every Google search I do is going into that algorithm for the ad to just pinpoint just right there. Every single one of my desires, boom, in my face.
Yeah. So one of the funny things with my social media browsing on Facebook is that every once in a while I'll go onto Facebook, buy, sell, trade, the marketplace, and look for something. And there was one day I was scrolling through and somebody had a trailer for sale, like a house trailer, and they had it for sale for $1,000. And so I clicked on it just to see what like the inside of it looked like. And so now every time I'm on Facebook, I see every single marketplace ad for a house trailer. And so it knows what I've clicked on very well. There's often the joke about, well, I just said that out loud, and now suddenly I'm seeing ads on Facebook. It's 100% true.
So I'll take it a step further, and this will probably terrify Matt. Carrie, you'll enjoy this, but there's a fairly decent-sized box store. I don't know if I call it a box store chain, but big store that has camera technology in its store that once you enter their building and they have an open Wi-Fi, your phone connects to it, it figures out if you have their app or an account with them. With their cameras, they can pretty much, in the access points, they can follow you around the store and they know where departments are. So Matt, you walk into the store and you go to the backpacks for hiking gear. Pretty soon you're going to notice that your inbox shows up with all hiking gear ads because they're using their cameras and their Wi-Fi to connect to you and follow you around their store. And once they know about where you're at, you're going to get ads to your account.
Which is what Starbucks is doing when you connect to their Wi-Fi, or the hotel chain that you just showed up at when you connect to their Wi-Fi, especially the ones that say, I understand all the fine print of this, and you really don't.
Yes.
That's what they're doing with your data. People are in the business of knowing what people do and why they do it.
How do smartphones impact our beliefs?
Again, we should be challenged by the fact that social media and smartphones just in general, they're in the business of changing behaviors and attitudes, which runs counter to the whole point of the Christian life, that we should be conforming our lives to Christ. It's an active process. Romans 12, verse 2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. And in Ephesians 2, in verse 12, it talks about working out your salvation with fear and trembling. So the Holy Spirit is working in us, but there's also an active part for us that we're working at our salvation. We have a role in the process where we must be centered upon what we're intaking and how we're working at our salvation and the things that we're doing, the things that we're saying, the things that we're intaking, because it's all affecting our heart. And we should be actively seeking, okay, so how do I better conform to Christ today? I'll often say to counselees, like, if you woke up today and you looked in the mirror and you didn't see Jesus staring back at you, you've got some more work to do. That the ultimate goal of the Christian life is one day when we're in glory, we see us fully conformed to the image of Christ. Mm-hmm. But here on earth, that's a continual process and we've got to do it. And I think often as Christians, we're lazy. We want God to do the changing and we want no part in the synergy of the process. And we've got to be actively worried about, okay, is what I'm consuming changing me in an ungodly direction? And I think that's where we've gotten with smartphones and generations that are coming on, very lackadaisical with understanding the goal is behavior modification by companies that are out there. And Christ should be the main person in the behavior modification business for us and not somebody else. So we've just got to be wary of that stuff.
I'll go back to that conference I went to, Matt.
Yeah. So
the gentleman that did it was a guy by the name of Carlos Whitaker. And his story was that, and we've been to conferences where they talk about technology and how bad it is. And then, I always feel like it's two-sided because I feel like they come on stage, give their talk, and then they go right back to their daily lives. And this gentleman gets up. He goes, hey, my name's Carlos. I'm actually camera operator number 5 at The Belonging Co., which is where this conference was. And I immediately in my mind went, interesting. What authority does a camera operator have to give a sermon?
Right.
Saying that next to a very talented camera operator, right, Carrie?
Yes.
But immediately that was where my mind went. And I love how it's like I said that out loud. Because one of the first things he said was, he was like, it's not about the person on stage or their position. It's about the message and where they're pointing. And I was like, all right, I'll accept that. But in his story, he took 3 months off of his life to live with monks and Amish people. Like a month and a half with each of them. Put his phone away and live those lives. And it's such a cool story. And I got pages of notes on it. I loved it. But from the monks, he learned to slow down, right? That God's speed is 3 miles an hour, right? That there's probably a reason that we walk at 3 miles an hour, we breathe at 3 miles an hour, we talk at 3, like there's some cadences in life. But he also noticed that we don't like boredom. When's the last time you were bored? It's a real question. And part of that's like, he just threw the question out there, is boredom from God? When's the last time we pondered something and actually used intuition to figure it out? That's one thing you learn from the Amish people. We lack intuition, right? We trust Joe that gives a Yelp review. We trust AI to give us the answer instantly. We don't wait or really think through a lot of questions and problems and things anymore, right? It's that instant answer. And when we just get instant answers and we're so used to instant answers, one, we've stopped trusting God, right? Because I don't need God to show me over time or let me figure it out with knowledge or wisdom, I'll just go to ChatGPT and put my question in and get it immediately.
Yeah.
At the same time, we're expecting, and this was something that caught me from this talk, was our phones and all this media speaking so loud to us, right?
Yeah.
God's found a lot of times in the Bible, not necessarily in the storm, but he's in the calm.
Yeah.
He's in the quiet. And I think we expect God to raise his voice over the world to shout at us and to get our attention, when we have to lower life's volume to be able to hear God again. Right?
That's a good word. Yeah. That's really good. Yeah. There's so much fighting for our attention, fighting for our time, and we're letting the poor thing win instead of the best thing. There's lots of good things, and then there's the best thing, and we're letting all the good things win out instead of the best thing.
The last time I was bored was 3 years ago. I don't know. I've probably been bored since then. I loved what you said, but where I'm going with this is our power went out for like 3 hours that night.
Okay.
And immediately I realized, like, my phone, yes, it still worked because it was connected to the cellular, but it was still light outside. And it was like everything that I wanted to go do, I couldn't do because it was reliant upon electricity. And I wanted to fill my mind with something that was entertainment, that needed electricity. And I couldn't do anything that I wanted to do. And I was infuriated.
Yeah. If you want to see how much people are addicted to their phones and to the internet, get on Facebook when there's a power outage in your area, and how much people just lose their mind online in terms of, when is the power going back on? It's been 3 hours. I can't stand it. But honestly, if I'm being honest, I feel like I'm crawling up the wall sometimes too when the internet's out that long. And those are the times when I realize how addicted to this stuff I really am.
And the amount of, how many times do we say that, oh, the world is so much worse than it was, and we're so much more divided? But in reality, are we more divided, or we just have access to a lot more worldly answers and worldly people that give their opinion out loud?
Yeah. Yeah. It's become a platform for me.
Yep.
Yeah. What's wrong with the world today? Us. We are.
And it's enabled everyone.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because you can't punch me from behind the keyboard.
Oh, that too. Yeah. There's the protection.
So,
what I meant is it's given every single human being a platform.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people don't need a platform. I don't need a platform.
I do. So about 5 years ago, I found an opportunity to be able to delete my Facebook account. I wanted to get rid of it because a friend of mine had challenged me to go without it for a week, and my life was amazing without it. So then I was like, man, but I truly do need it, because there was stuff tied to school, stuff tied to different aspects of life where I needed it for that purpose. And I found an opportunity once where, okay, none of the kids' stuff is tied to it, whatever, I can nuke my account. Well, it wasn't long after that I needed one again for those exact purposes. Like I want to join the second grade teachers page. I want to join the Northwoods Awana page. And so I recreated an account. And it's actually a dummy account. You can find me out there, but I only have one friend. It's my wife. And then there's like a few pages that I like. I've had that page going for 2 years now, and it is already, I mean, it's inundated with everything that you scroll past and you spend 2 seconds on. Oh, it knows I like that. And even something that I tried to keep on the shell, like bare bones, has already morphed into a monster.
Yeah.
They say that even if you don't have a Facebook account and never have had one, Facebook has a full profile on you.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
They can piece enough information from the 7 degrees of connection, and they've got full profiles on everyone.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. They know a lot about all of us.
Tonight.
That part didn't bother me as much as I just didn't want the temptation of the scroll and the algorithm there.
Yeah.
It says in the Social Dilemma, like, the biggest problem that people often are afraid of is their data being stolen, but they don't realize that every time you click, every time you do something, it's already all out there.
You put it on their platforms, on their servers. It is their data at that point. It's not yours.
Yeah. They don't care about your social security number. They care about what you're clicking on, what you like, and what you buy. That's the real big thing, because they want to sell you more stuff. Thanks for tuning in to the Northwoods Church Matters podcast. If you'd like to find out more about Northwoods Church, you can visit us at our website, www.northwoodschurch.org. Again, that's www.northwoodschurch.org.